Good evening, folks. This is Andy Pedraza with Special Effects Academy. We're on the start of the week session for August 22nd of 2021. We will be going through our standard agenda. I'll look at the prior week's results, our currency strength meter for the week, fundamental announcements on the calendar, a look at the major peers on the daily charts, any setups we see in progress, and a few words in conclusion. Starting with the ledgers, we had a pretty flat week on the long-term account. We're down about 1 percentage point on closed out trades, but that was mostly swap cost, more than us having lost 1%. So we do have multiple trades open and some of them are showing profit. We took profit on a couple of entries during the week, but they were very small profits in the neighborhood of $10 each, so really did not move the needle much. And I think one older trade did close out against us, but again, mostly sideways more than anything else. On the intermediate, we actually gained a couple of percentage points, again, on closed trades. The one trade that was open throughout the week was the pound dollar, which was a loser, but we had a couple or three older trades that did close out at profit, as has been reported in the daily update. So we had a nice bit of an uptick for the week. And on the short-term ledger, we were flat. Actually, we gained just under 1%, but I'm going to call it flat. And we did have two trades remaining open over the weekend, simply because I am of the opinion that they will be coming into profit at some point. Notes and opportunities for improvement. We had a few trends firm up, but mostly sideways, if bumpy action for the week. A lot of movement, but ultimately no net gains or losses among the pairs. They were simply trending sideways. Pairs that had gained the previous week lost this week, and so on. So a very flat market at this point, though with a few promising trends, as I said, coming up. Afghanistan becoming a very embarrassing situation for the U.S. and its allies, as the country has been completely overrun by the Taliban in less than a week after the withdrawal of U.S. forces commenced, leaving our allies on the ground holding the bag, everyone that had been working for the occupation forces or the previous Afghan government is now fearing for their lives and trying to escape. The problem is that the one place to escape from, Kabul's airport, is completely surrounded by the Taliban and nobody is getting in or out by land. Whoever's at the airport may have a chance of leaving if they can get on an airplane, and all U.S. and allied forces are supposed to leave the country by the 31st of this month. So it's pretty much a done deal. I don't see anything changing other than more people either losing their lives or ending up in a very, very bad situation. So a lot of egg on the US's face, and just doesn't look good. What impact that may have to the market is your guess is as good as mine, but it's certainly not a good thing. More lockdowns and restrictions threaten global recovery, global economic recovery, due to the Delta variant. So a lot of countries are initiating lockdowns yet again, like New Zealand started one last week, and restrictions are increasing everywhere. In the US, there is a push to make vaccines all but mandatory, and they're not making them mandatory per se, but in many places, you now have to show a vaccination card to even continue holding your job. In New York, to go into a restaurant and any public venue, you have to show a vaccination status. It's not looking pretty, but we'll see what happens. And of course, I didn't put it on the chart, but we'll see that later on the slide. I'm sorry, we'll see that later in the relevant chart. But oil had its biggest loss in quite a while, dropping down to somewhere in just above $60. So about a $10 drop from its most recent high. That has not been good for the Canadian dollar, for one, though I think it's a little bit of an overreaction, which again, we'll see later in the deck. Relative strength meter for the week that just ended. We had the euro, the dollar, the yen, and the Swiss show gains overall. though all of them except the dollar had a few reds here and there. Losers, the big loser was the Australian dollar. It was a complete sweep in the negative. It lost ground against every other currency, followed closely by the Swiss, which lost ground, by the Kiwi, the New Zealand dollar, which lost ground against everybody except the Australian. The Canadian, as mentioned, due to the oil slump, is showing a lot of red. That should actually say -5, not -4, but it did gain against the Aussie and the New Zealand, but it still had a negative against everybody else. And the pound was, I'm going to call it neutral, though, as you can see there, it won 3. It beat the Canadian, the Aussie, and the New Zealand, and it lost 4. It lost against the euro, the dollar, the yen, and the Swiss. But again, it sort of evenly matched there. And I'm seeing the pound as more of in a sideways market than anything else right now. Fundamental announcements for the week, none that we will be trading live. There is very few announcements to begin with, but none of the ones that we usually trade, like interest rate decisions, employment numbers, and the like. And with that, we move into the charts. As I mentioned, oil had a pretty big slump, dropping from its most recent high of around 75 almost down to $60. I think it ended at 62 and change for the week. So a pretty significant drop. It is still above a very strong level of support there at the $60 mark, but certainly this is a note of concern for those following oil, or at least for those bullish on oil, I should say. And moving on to the major pairs, the euro dollar continues to go down, breaking the next to last level of support, but on Friday showed a very small but significant recovery, and we'll have to see how the week starts. I am still a dollar bear. I think the dollar has to go down due to a number of geopolitical and internal issues, but the market is not agreeing with me right now. Of course, we do trade whatever the market's doing, not what I think it's doing. So we'll be waiting to see which way we go. But I will probably trade this into, and all the dollar pairs, into dollar weakness if they start moving in that direction. So this will be a period that we will be very heavily into pending orders. If it goes above a certain point, we go in. Euro dollar itself, I think we're already in on one trade, and it is showing a profit as the week ended, thanks to that Friday movement, but too soon to tell which way it will ultimately go. Pound dollar also slumping, the pound slumping against the dollar. So we see it testing a previous low mark. Still more of a sideways market than anything else. We can see that clearly on the chart after that breakout trend, which took us all the way up to the 142 level. It slipped down pretty close to where it's at right now before coming back up to test that higher level and then coming down and again down. So it is below the Ichimoku cloud right now. And as I said, I think we're going to have a chance to trade this one back up, but seeing is believing. USD JPY, very sideways, doesn't seem to find a direction. And it's being a very contrarian pair. When the dollar weakens, it doesn't against the yen. And when the dollar gains, it seems like the yen holds its own. So it's just doing the opposite of what the rest of the dollar pairs are doing, and ultimately just moving sideways following a very, very decent or significant level of support resistance. USD Canadian, one of the bigger movers last week as oil collapsed and took the Canadian with it. I think this is a huge overreaction, and we are already trading it in the opposite direction. We'll have to see how right we were as the week kicks off. We were carrying only a very small amount of profit as Friday ended. So these next 24 hours will be key to determine whether it was the right move or not. I'm thinking it was the right move, but again, we shall see. USD Swiss going into a sideways pattern yet again, holding support right above the Ichimoku cloud. And again, I think we're going to have a chance to trade this one down, and we already have a trade open in that direction on the short-term account. Again, time will tell. Aussie dollar, one of the harder hit dollar pairs, almost at the bottom of the chart. And this one, I think, is going to go further down simply because the Australian is weakening. Now, it may retrace and test resistance at some point, but I think that both currencies are weakening, the Aussie and the dollar, even though the dollar didn't weaken last week, but they both currencies are in facing bad times. But I think the dollar will hold on more than the Australian will. So this one may keep going down. Kiwi dollar, on the other hand, though it has slumped, and it's mainly slumped as a result of a new lockdown initiated in New Zealand, I think this one's another overreaction, and the Kiwi will gain against the dollar ultimately. When that happens, who knows? We do have pending orders in place to take us in long should that move begin. That covers the dollar pairs. Aussie Canadian is at the bottommost level of support, and that's what it's doing. I think this one may still go down, and you'll notice that even though the CAD weakened pretty much against everybody else, not so against the Aussie. Against the Aussie, there was no weakness. Actually, the Canadian gained against the Australian. Euro Swiss is also very near the bottom of the chart, but it is a very slow mover in pip amounts, so not giving us those big movements we love. We'll have to see if it does turn around. I think there's a good chance of getting a better amount of pips trading it up as opposed to down, but again, not my favorite pair right now. Euro pound is a bottom feeder. It is at the bottommost level of the chart right now, and looking like it's staging a little bit of a recovery, testing that trend line as the week ended. Too soon to tell what it will ultimately do. Euro JPY also dropping very nicely, breaking multiple levels of support in the past few months. And now it's, well, it's around the middle of the chart and still a ways to go to the bottom. We are short on this pair, and we're looking for a bigger move towards the bottom. Euro Canadian, and this is another sign of that Canadian weakness I hinted at, and another one I think may have overreacted, though. I do see the Euro CAD moving back up into that blue corridor, that blue channel. But maybe not this time around. We'll see. If it does break above, we will start trading it in that direction. Pound JPY is more sideways than anything else and testing support very near the bottom. I think this one is another good candidate for a long position. And indeed, we have a pending order in that direction. Aussie JPY, this one will probably head for the bottom on Aussie weakness more than anything the yen is doing. However, if the yen should wake up and start moving into strength, this thing may drop like a stone. So stay tuned for that. Euro New Zealand is at the top of its mostly sideways range, and that means that it's giving us a good opportunity to trade it down, pending order in place. Pound Canadian, another one that suffered on the Canadian movement, but it did a very, very nice recovery on Friday in the Canadian dollar's favor. Another one I think ultimately will go to the top. I think the pound has more positives than the Canadian, but it is whatever the market will do. So stay tuned for that as well. Pound Swiss, very sideways, breaking that level of support that it's been respecting for so long, but not a significant break, and a very good chance that it will start moving up again very soon. So stay tuned for that one as well. And last but not least, Pound Aussie in a complete breakout. So we have the Aussie collapsing against the pound, and we have been riding that thing all the way up, and I see no reason to stop now. This one probably still has legs. That's it for the currency chart setups we see in progress as the week begins. The pound is still holding steady, except possibly against the US dollar, which I suspect is temporary. The dollar is showing some strength, but doesn't seem too steady. So I do expect dollar weakness in weeks, months to come. Of course, it will do it on its own timetable. The Australian pairs are losing ground more and more against select currencies, pretty much all of them, but the Australian is still not down for the count. Right now, it could go in either direction. So trade it carefully, but I think there's a pretty good chance it's going to break into full-blown weakness. So stay tuned for that. The Swiss pairs, the Swiss had a very bad week after a very good week the prior one, so it has gone sort of sideways, and we're waiting to see ultimately which direction it picks. And the Canadian pairs, of course, as I mentioned, the Canadian dollar is suffering from oil malaise. That oil drop did not help the Canadian, but it may have been an overreaction from the market. So I will be looking to trade the USD CAD back into Canadian strength, dollar weakness, whichever one you pick, or a combination, and select other Canadian pairs as well, but I have not picked direction on those. In some of them, I do expect the Canadian to lose ground, but against the dollar, I don't think so. So we'll see. And last but not least, a few words in conclusion. Trends are the real holy grail. I've always seen people, especially beginners, newbies to the Forex market, looking for that holy grail, that secret, whatever it is that makes a successful trader successful. And they keep trying to dig up that secret. And I've been accused of holding out on people and not telling them how I really do it. There are no secrets, but if there is a holy grail to trading, it is trends. Finding a good trend to ride is one of the best and most lucrative approaches in trading. That said, you have to be prepared to enter a lot of trades, lots of them that turn out to be fake outs, indeed the majority. And then you have to grin and take the small losses as they come in. Don't let the small losses become big losses. Then you have to be patient on the remainder that are moving in the right direction and let them produce. Do not take your profits too quickly. At the same time, you have to protect some of that profit as it accrues, or it may just slip through your hands. So it is a balancing act. And it sometimes feels like trying to catch a falling knife. You may catch it by the handle and be okay, or the point may go right through the palm of your hand. So it is sometimes very daunting. Now, you don't have to like it, but you just have to accept that that is the way it is. All trends start somewhere, and when they start, they don't look like trends. They just look like very small breakouts, testing of resistance or support. And that's when you have to take those trades and see which way they go. And as I said, a lot of them will turn out to be fake outs, and you just get out of that trade as quick as you can. And the rest are going to start moving more and more, and you have to be able to keep those trades open. You have to risk some of your open profit in order to gain even bigger profit. So that's it. That is the end of my spiel for this week. Any comments or questions? Okay, then I thank you very much. That is a wrap, and I'll be posting this very soon and sending it out by email to my paid subscribers as well. So everybody have a great trading week. Those of you in the northeast of the US, be very careful. There is a hurricane warning. A storm coming out of the Atlantic is going to hit the northeast coast of the US. Might be a lot of very strong winds, definitely going to be bucket loads and bucket loads of rain with flood warnings and whatnot. So be careful out there, everybody else, and you too in the Northeast. Have a great week, and I will talk to you throughout the week if you're a subscriber, or next weekend if you're not. Either way, I will be talking to you. Thank you so much. Have a great week. Bye-bye.